Hello, welcome to Movie Umpers. My name is Bob Sham.
My name is Angela.
This sounds here maybe dogs. We have left behind the future. The future is gone. The future is back to being uncertain, and we need a break from the future. So why not go on a vacation through the old world? That's right. We're white people, so where we're from is a patchwork of a lot of countries we're going to be visiting this month. That's right, it's European vacation. All month long, we're going all over Europe, like 6 French films, 2 Norwegian, 2 German, not all of Europe, just the ones in which I have DVDs that we need to watch. And we're starting it off with our old friend Federico Fellini. With the 1960 film La Dolce Vita, written by Fellini, Ennio Flaiano, Tullio Pinelli, Brunello Rondi, and Pier Paolo Pasolini. Those are the writers. Starring Marcello Mastroianni, Anita Ekberg, Anouk Amy, Yvonne Furneaux, Alan Cooney. Yvonne Furneaux, we've seen her before. She was, I believe it was either the roommate or the sister of Catherine Deneuve in Repulsion.
Oh, yes.
And she is the girlfriend of our lead, Marcello.
Interesting, and I wonder if the reason we didn't recognize her is because in that one, she's very detached. And in this one, she is a raw nerve.
La Dolce Vita, this was a huge international hit in its time. It was popping all over the world, and it had recognition in the United States. It won for Best Costumes that year.
If you tell someone I'm going to watch a Fellini movie, this is the one they know the name of. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big 3 Fellinis, the one that people seem to always bring up, are this one, La Strada, and 8.5. And we've seen La Strada some time ago. There is no, what's her name? His wife, Fellini's wife, what's her name? Giuliana Messina?
Yes,
she's not in this one,
right.
but
yeah.
She shows up in a lot of other ones. We watched Il Bidone. She's in that one briefly, and that one was very good. We watched that during Noir Month. But yes, La Dolce Vita, definitely one of Fellini's big... Well, the one that really launched him, that probably was a lot of people's introduction to Fellini at the time.
And what an introduction.
And he became extremely influential to a lot of filmmakers that came up in the 60s and 70s. This movie covers Italian cafe societies, post-war Italy, 1960, where things are getting trendy, hip, the bohemian stuff. One obvious guy who pulled a lot from Fellini is one of your favorite directors, Woody Allen. So I know you
That
love
is
Woody.
blasphemous to say he is my favorite. No.
Oh, Woody. But yes, La Dolce Vita. And this movie is a bit of a tapestry filtered through our lead, Marcello, who is a journalist, but he works on society people, celebrities, shit like that. And he has this crew of photographers. One guy he calls paparazzi, which popularized the term
Paparazzo
in the U.S. This movie is it's really hard to undersell how subtly influential this movie really became, not just in film, but like the way people talked about things. It was just like a sexy, hip, cool movie to be really into at the time. I'm trying to think of what would be one now that people would think is real hip and cool or some shit. We open up the movie with a statue of Jesus being carried by a helicopter, and Marcello and his paparazzi pals are following, and this statue is flying over this building, and the Marcello and the paparazzi stop at this building where all these girls are sunbathing in bikinis. They're trying to get their phone number and shit, interrupted by these beautiful women as they're trying to follow the story of this statue of Jesus being flown through the city, and the contrast of the decadent societies and religion itself and how it all overlaps and plays, because he's not only reporting on socialites, but also there's a religious angle that occurs in the movie as well, where kids claim that they're seeing the Madonna, and he has to report on stuff like that. But he's also completely disillusioned. He's very much this hip, swag, good-looking guy.
Every woman that he wants, he gets.
It seems like he knows it's all pretty vapid, but he can't help himself at the same time. And he's a total fucking himbo.
There is a moment later when he tells one of the women, "Tonight, right now, I love you. I want you." And he's one of those people, whoever he's with is going to feel like the most important person in the world, but none of them really give a shit about him, and he doesn't really give a shit about them. He's having a good time. In that moment, he feels those feelings, but then they fuck, and he wakes up the next morning, and he's, "See you later, I'm going to work." The one person that really loves him is his girlfriend, and he can't stand her. We meet her because he comes home from a night with a socialite, and she has attempted suicide. She's taken poison. He takes her into the hospital, sees one of his paparazzi friends, and begs him, "Hey, don't tell anybody about this. This will ruin me. Please just don't take a picture. Don't tell anyone I was here." And one of them is a really good friend of his who will actually do that. Sometimes will leave the other paparazzi and just go have dinner with him. Mm-hmm. But basically, we find out that they were in a loving relationship at one time, because she talks about, "You used to love me and we used to be good, and now you run around and leave me alone." And she can't let go of him. She is obsessed, and I get it. She really loves him, but she has no self-confidence, and the little attention he gives her is breadcrumbs enough for her to stay. He tells her at one point that all she ever talks about is food and bed, and that's boring. He wants to have conversations with her. She's only ever, "What do you want to eat? I can make you ravioli. Come home and fuck me." Mm-hmm. But there's no other conversation between them, but he's also never there to have those conversations.
He's very resentful of her maternalism.
Yes.
She's really the only one who's attempting to provide for him in any way.
She's trying to feed him bananas at one point because she knows he hasn't eaten.
I understand his small resentment and how it may reflect on himself and how he feels about himself. This movie, this seems like a very insecure man at the end of the day. Like, he seems like a guy that can, get any pussy he wants out there, but he also seems very small at the same time. But he's resentful. The only person who truly loves him, and we get this conflict throughout, as it's like 8 different chapters in this movie, and she's weaving in and out of it with him, and they have a big fight, and she's trying to walk off, and she walks away, and he comes back like hours later, picks her up, and they're just back in bed together.
He won't let her go. either. There is part of him that, whether he feels a responsibility or an echo of that love, it is never good for anybody. If you stop loving someone, fucking leave. It's one thing to say, I love you, I don't like you right now, or I want to work on this, but that's a conversation and you're doing a job together. He's just decided he's checked out, but he also won't cut her loose for real. Because you're right. He tells her at one point, get out of the car, I'm fucking done with you. But then dawn breaks and he comes back. We see...
But he's still drawn to her. He may just be dried up inside and not have much feeling about it one way or the other, but I don't think he's completely, like, disconnected.
She lives with him.
I think it's just like the long-term relationship feeling that has dragged him.
Yes, but I also think there might be an aspect of it where... They live together and they're not married. His dad comments on it when his dad visits later. I don't think he can be alone.
Right.
I don't think he can ever be alone. So her at home waiting for him, though he resents it, there is some comfort in it because when he goes there, he can be mad at her instead of thinking about himself.
The night that she poisons herself or attempts suicide, he meets this socialite lady who's the son of a rich... Or the daughter of some rich guy.
And they fuck around, you can tell.
Yeah, and she comes back around as well, but they meet at this club where they do all these weird circusy, like, half-ass Cirque du Soleil type performances. And he walks up to the bar, and there's the image right above my head here. And it's really funny because he's rizzing her up at the bar, right? As the kids say, rizzing. And this happens throughout the movie. You notice that people, and sometimes the characters directly on camera, will look directly at the camera. Mm-hmm. And if you look at this image above our head, it's got Marcello and the socialite lady and looking like Jackie Onassis. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lady right next to him. We don't know who this lady is. We don't know who the lady is, but in this image, she's just looking dead at the camera. Like... this observance that some aspect of that decadence that understands that it thrives on being watched. Like,
absolutely.
This is nothing if you're not here looking. So it might as well just look right fucking back at you.
This group of paparazzi that is everywhere, they are a character as a group who are actually affecting this story. It's like a Greek chorus. Running around telling people what to do, asking for things. They're always there.
They're the most uninhibited aspect of a lot of things still feels like it's putting on some airs here. But the group of paparazzi guys, the camera guys, they're just kind of blatantly scummy. They're at least like maybe more honest with who they are compared to a lot of people that they have to feed off of. And they also feed off of them. And
absolutely.
Matter.
The people who... are acting as though they don't want their pictures taken would be sad if they were not there. Or they would feel as though, who's looking at them? Those guys chasing them and them getting to say, no, leave me alone and hiding from them, that's part of the whole act.
These chapters are buffered with scenes from a cafe where Marcello, like, meets up with paparazzi or other socialite people that he's trying to interview. We only see him typing like once, right? It doesn't.
And he's not even typing much. He can't write in that moment.
From what we can tell, he's probably not that good at his job, right? But the way Fellini is maneuvering through these crowded cafe scenes with cars going by and characters coming into the foreground and like, it's so fucking smooth. It looks so good the way he can capture a crowd and ensemble like this. And like, it's mad skillful here. Cinematography by Otello Martelli.
So good.
If you're looking up just random images, you Google La Dolce Vita, and you're going to find images of Anita Ekberg, who's playing an American actress, almost like a Marilyn Monroe-esque type, by the name of Sylvia Rank, who's come to make a movie alongside her actor boyfriend, who's completely indifferent.
And is totally drunk.
And if you look up images of this movie, it's all about her. You see her dancing.
She's on the poster.
You see her, she's in the fountain. Like, if you never saw this movie, you'd think, like, oh, this is about this guy and this buxom lady and some torrid affair that they're going to have for over 2 hours in this movie. No, she's just like a 20 to 25 minute chapter in this movie, and then we never see her again.
That's what's so great about this is it is just scenes from his life. And there's not a through line aside from him and his job. He's always a journalist until at the very end where he says he
becomes a publisher.
He's become a publisher.
He just tosses away the creative aspect of what he supposedly had. People accuse him of being an artist, and he's very resentful of the label.
Also, when his father comes to visit and he tries to say, oh, you probably have to go home and go to bed so you can go to work tomorrow. And he says, no, my job is here. I am just always out in the world seeing what I can see. He also does travel to see different things, like the kids who say they saw the Virgin Mary, or he goes to sets, whatever, trying to find rich people. But even when he's out traveling, and even at one moment when he's in that lady's hotel room and a bunch of people are interviewing her, he's calling home to his girlfriend, but he's mad at her that he's calling her.
The character of Sylvia Rank, she's like a big, like, Fellini in the few that we've seen in our lives. There's got to be like some parties going on throughout the movies, and the character of Sylvia Rank is supreme party queen throughout the movie. She seems to make everyone happy around her. People love to be around her. She's a hottie. She just looks good, and her fame just draws people into her. And yeah, her and Marcello end up running off. They're doing like little tourism bits, and he's accompanying her.
He's calling someone.
And they end up jumping around in this famous fountain that's in Rome. At one point, they do kind of come together. Like, it does seem romantic, but then almost like it's like a someone flipped a switch. The flowing water of the fountain stops, and then it's dawn. It's like all of a sudden, like it was a spell that just cast.
That happens over and again in this movie when dawn comes.
They start to head back to where she's going to be, and she finds her nonchalant fiance in a car, drunk, and he gets up and just slaps the shit out of her, and she goes running off back into her hotel.
And he punches Marcello.
And that's the last we see of those characters.
When they are at the party, it's one of the few times we see Marcello visibly a little unsure of himself because he's trying to keep her attention, and she has friends everywhere. She's everyone's friend. So he does eventually get her away from the party and go do all that. But there's a part where he keeps trying to like turn her face towards him and turn her body towards him. And she's waving at friends and dancing with other people.
So we have these two kids who have this purported sighting of the Madonna. And he's gone to report and his buddies will take pictures of that. And his girlfriend is with him this time. Italy's a very Catholic-ass country. Rome is there. Where the Pope fucking lives, or the Vatican, or whatever. We saw this in Il Bidone, where the con artists there are pretending to be clergy, but the thing that guilts the main character is like someone who's very faithful, but also just tragically wrecked, rattles him out of his con job there, and it's a big part of like how religion is being manipulated, but also used to guilt the manipulators. Fellini, I don't think he's mad at Jesus or anything. I think he is criticizing religion and the way it has a hold on his society in which he grew up. How easily swayed and manipulated people can be through it. Like how it's so ingrained. Some people criticize religion, and I think Fellini's kind of like this as well. It's almost in defense of the most purest form of it and more critical of the human aspect that is destined to just corrupt the fuck out of this and those who get wrapped up in it and taken advantage of. And that's what you get here. These kids are, and you can tell these kids are full of shit too, that they claim they saw Madonna and they're just pointing at random places and be like, oh, this is where you need to build a church or something.
There's one point where they've got the whole crowd following them saying, oh, she's over there. Oh, no, she's over there. Like they're playing hide and go seek with Madonna.
Like it's legitimately absurd, but there's also parts where some girl got trampled or something from these crowds going back and forth following these kids. And so they're bringing like they're sick and and injured people in front of this tree where the Madonna was supposedly under. And it's just so fucking dreary. It's a big part of what makes Marcella even more disconnected, seeing through this whole thing.
Well, and there's the other layer on top of this of your paparazzi. In this particular scene, there is a director who has set up lights and is giving people candles. He's totally staging this moment so he can film it. And so you have all this going on. It starts raining at one point, and the crowd's kind of gone away from the tree, or they've taken a break. And when the woman you're talking about carries a small child right up to the tree and is praying, that's the real moment. But everything else around them is a fucking circus.
And that just makes that just seem so much sadder when you see that bit of sincerity in the middle of the most cynical tornado of bullshit you've ever seen. Marcello and Emma, his girlfriend, they go to this luxurious home of a man named Steiner. And he has a wife and 2 kids.
Yes, he has a wife and 2 kids, and there are a lot of intellectuals there. There's this older woman who's drinking whiskey and talking about how no one should ever get married, because if she'd ever gotten married, she wouldn't have done all the things she's done. And there's artists there, and it's interesting because Steiner is in the middle of this group of people, and all these people are at his house, and he and Marcello are standing on different sides of a period of learning about yourself. Marcello knows he wants a change, but he doesn't know what that is. And he's looking to Steiner to teach him that. He says to him at one point, I want to come here more. I want to be in this environment more. But Steiner says to him, you may not realize that you can be totally happy where you are. You don't always need all of this. And there's a
poet there.
There's a poet, yes.
That is actually, I forget their name, but it is a real poet who plays himself. Nico
shows up later.
Velvet Underground and Nico later also shows up playing himself. But this poet explains, like, it's better to just make no choice at all than just to don't choose anything. Don't tie yourself down into anything. Don't put yourself into a decision where you're forced to go in one direction or another.
And that's that same woman, right?
Yeah.
Steiner, there's something sad about him. I got the feeling that he felt that everyone was fake because the person he was most interested in was Emma.
Yeah.
He was fascinated by her because she didn't have the pretenses of everyone else in that room. He started to play a record at one point and stopped and said, oh, you don't want to hear that. And she said, yes, I do. And it was the sounds of thunder.
Animal noises.
There was thunder and then there were birds. And she was so sweet.
Emma,
and honestly...
Well, Emma's the most sincere in that room.
There are moments all over this movie where I really relate to her a lot. And in that moment when she's sitting in this room of people who are all, trying to be cool and they have their thing that they're trying to do or say or be, and she's listening to this record and she goes, it's birds. That's what birds sound like. And she's not an idiot, but it's delightful to her. There is maybe an innocence to her. She's not jaded like some of the other people, although it's hard to imagine why she's not, because she's in this relationship where she gets treated like shit all the time.
It is interesting that you do connect with Emma. I kind of liked Emma, and viewers and listeners, don't read into this too deep, but I did kind of connect with Marcello's disillusionment and general boredom.
Yeah.
And I understood it. Like, I felt bad for Emma, but I kind of understood, like, how he felt about it. There is something about relationships in general where it is, if you just think about, like, the question of, like, what do you want for dinner? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine, like, the hundreds of times that people in long-term relationships, like, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And it just seems like that Marcello, there is a strength to being able to figure out how to make all that new again. It's extremely hard. Mm-hmm. And Marcello, he's not a strong person. He can't really do it. He doesn't know what to do other than just yell at it, or just go be a man-ho about it,
The reason he goes with all these women is because it's the new beginning of something constantly. There's it's the action film thing where, you're in love right now, but what happens when you have to go to the grocery store tomorrow?
But let's go ahead and get to what the turn of the Steiner story, because especially in so many Italian movies, and Fellini's no exception, you're going to have like these like fancy looking party scenes, and then it's going to be like the saddest fucking shit you ever saw. So they call into a report to the Steiner house, and he has shot his children and himself, and
his wife has been away.
Yeah, and they actually meet the wife in the street.
Marcello goes with the detective because the detective doesn't know what she looks like, and he says, I'll go with you to meet her, and the whole paparazzo is there. The
detective was like, all these brunette Italian women with the same eye makeup look exactly the same to me. So
you even at one point had a hard time with which actress was a witch.
I was getting people confused.
I get it. They do all look very similar.
So Marcello, Steiner's presenting like another side, something that may be accessible to Marcello, something that maybe he considers or maybe would put, in the chamber as maybe an option. Who knows what he's really thinking at any given moment.
He does tell him, I want you to help me. And Steiner says, I cannot give you advice. The most I can do is introduce you to some people.
And then this guy who supposedly has a life that he could attain fucking kills his kids and himself. So we go to another big socialite party, yes.
And our lady from the beginning is there.
Yes, and she's the one that gets him in on that. And this is where Nico is playing herself. This big romp, and they're off and they're going to look for ghosts and stuff. And it's just, it all feels so very casual, but all very decadent and fancy at the same time.
And sexual. Everyone's talking about, if you get scared, stand close to me. And they go into this decrepit house on the back of the property where they're looking for the ghosts. And there is a woman who says that she is channeling spirits. So you get the opposite from the religion that's all around them to this occult.
Yeah. Now,
which has a stronger tie to each other than people often talk about.
The heiress socialite that brings Marcello there, he goes off with her, and they separate in this area because there's this part in these rooms where, and it's like that in a lot of old buildings in certain places, where you can stand at a certain point and with someone on the other side, and it sounds like you're talking right next to him.
Oh yeah,
there's like a thing in Penn Station that's like that in New York City. And they have a conversation, and that's when you were talking about how he's confessing his love.
Well, she asks him to marry her.
She asks him to marry her, and as they're confessing their love to each other, this man walks up to her and just seduces her right there.
Starts making out with her.
And it's like she forgot everything she said right there.
Because she is the same as Marcello. That's why they understand each other.
So he hears nothing, and it's like he knows she's gone. Like a kitten just goes off into the party and starts to meet another woman, and he starts to flirt. And this is actually great. He's flirting with this other lady, and she is not having it.
Oh, yeah, no. She doesn't want anything to do with him.
Like, it's like she sees through him, which is fascinating. She sees his shallowness. She sees his insecurities, and she really wants nothing to do with it. But then there's this part where, and we don't see him directly, but the cult lady with the streaks in her hair,
she's looking at the camera again.
Yeah, she's looking straight at the camera, and we assume it's Marcello, and she seems receptive to the camera as though it's seducing her, and we assume it's Marcello.
Well, what a coincidence. Ouch. Oh, no, Danny. No, non qui. No, amore, che fai? Pazzo, sei pazzo.
Fades out. And you mentioned, like, did they have an orgy? And I think they did.
I do too, because then it's dawn, and they're all coming in a group, all walking together back to the main house, and then a mother, the matriarch of the family of whoever owns this estate, is there with some religious men, and the assumption I made is that it's a Sunday morning because she mentions mass. One of the men goes to her, and then everyone who's part of that family goes with them, and the rest of the party goers are like, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah.
But it is that walk of shame, but it's 20 people doing a walk of shame.
Well, during the walk of shame, the occult lady introduces Marcello to her son.
Oh, yeah.
Who's in the walk of shame.
Did you notice that at the beginning of that party, that was the guy that was hitting on all the old women. Little bit of an Oedipus situation, maybe.
There's another point, and it's the only time we see him. I think he leaves Rome. He's on some coastal area somewhere, South Italy, where he's tied up and he meets this younger girl. And
she's old enough to be on her own in this city, but she looks very young.
He's very complimentary to her, describes her as like an angel type, but then that's it. But she will come back around. But we come back to after the Steiner stuff is broken up into two. But after that, we go to yet another socialite party.
And this is the end, right?
And this is when time has passed since the Steiner stuff. And we also get the sequence of him and Emma getting into this big argument, and then they end up in bed together. Well, time has passed since then, many years, it implies. And he
has a gray streak. And
he's not a journalist anymore. He's not into literature anymore. Now he's a publicist. He's doing the more business side of all this shit. It is presented as though he's sold out his creativeness. And Emma's long gone at this point. We don't hear anything about her. So we're having another socialite party, and he's definitely more well-to-do. He is kind of like a Steiner without the family. He's got all the stuff he needs. Maybe more like the people in the orgy ghost hunter party he was at before.
This is not his house. This is the house of a woman who just got divorced, and her current boyfriend is there. Her husband she just divorced shows up at the end of the party, and everybody's cool with each other.
He's weirdly patient.
Yeah, he is weirdly patient. She strips at one point.
Yeah.
We don't see her naked, but we see her with just a mink stole across her. But there's this thing where they're all just fucking bored as shit, sitting around being like, you do something for us. You do a show. You strip. You do this.
And there's a girl at this party who sounds like country American, and she has no idea what anyone is saying.
Io scommetto che tu non hai mai fatto l'amore. Hai mai avuto un uomo tutto per te? No?
What's he saying?
Un uomo che ti stringa.
She's dancing at one point like she's at a hoedown. It's crazy to me that the two American women represented in this movie, one is a fucking Jessica Rabbit sex pot.
And the other
one is a backwoods hillbilly, but they say they're both actresses. They call her the actress.
We may be overplaying her hillbilliness. She's in this socialite party.
You know, because she's an actress. That's why she's there. They call her, because at one point they also say, we need to get her laid. We bet she's never had sex. She doesn't know what they're saying.
What's he saying?
But they're talking about how somebody needs to fuck her right there in the room in front of everyone.
Also, this movie, for some 1960s shit, had to have been revelatory for a lot moviegoers. Because there are gay men all over this movie.
There are gay men.
There are men dressing in drag.
Performing at a party.
Anita Ekberg character has this guy who looks like a Greek statue come to life. Or a Roman statue come to life. Who's like obviously gay. They have cross-dressers at the party. And there's a man who he works with that you can tell
he works at that cafe.
At the cafe.
He's always around.
We see him all throughout. And
he's very gossipy.
And it isn't subtext. They are gay. Well, at this party, there's this lady there, and Marcello just starts like messing her up, riding her at some point. It's like he's lost into the whole decadence that he was right to be disillusioned. It seemed like he saw through all of this throughout the movie, but he can't help himself but to just envelop himself into this society. Totally goes all in, and he's like wiping junk food, whatever, throwing feathers on her. And everyone's kind of like laughing and trying to be cool about it, and the lady's taking it in stride in the sense like as though he's doing some kind of a performance art piece, but he's really just disrespecting her. And in a way, it's just like he's finishing selling the rest of his soul in this moment into this bohemian bullshit social society.
Yeah, he's the ringleader. He's the ringleader of this group of people. Yeah. He's the one coming up with every one of these ideas, telling people what to do, acting as though he's the lord over this group. But what that reads as truly is that he is empty and fucking sad as shit.
He used to at least be able to objectively look and see who the king jerks were, but now he is the king jerk.
He's the king jerk. And him degrading her in that way, there is a point where she stops and says, that's enough. I'm finished now. And she's not mad at him, but she's finished.
Because
she will not let it happen anymore.
Because it's that notion of like you don't want to seem uncool about it.
Yes.
You know?
Also, and you may have already said this in a way, but it felt as though he's taking it out on her. It's one of those things like hazing. This person wants to be here so badly, I'm going to treat them like shit and see how much they'll let me do before they stop me.
We go out to the beach. This is the end of the movie. And we see this manta ray looking thing that is like, it may be just a bloated manta ray, but it's this big sea creature that washed up on the beach.
Some of the girls notice it. They've been kicked out of the house because the divorced husband came home. And they're walking down towards the beach. Some of the girls run ahead because they see a creature and they want to go see what's going on. Marcello is walking, and one of the gay men who had been performing at the party is kind of half taken off his drag, and he's got his little makeup on still. And he's talking to Marcello, and he says, you know, for every one of us that comes out, two of us quit. The idea that there's all these new kids coming up being open about who they are, and so these elder gays are sort of retiring, and he's talking about himself as though he's just about there. And he's a young man.
It's interesting that he's just saying this to Marcello, because you can't imagine that Marcello cares anything about what he's saying. He's just kind of volunteering this like cultural context of his own life, you know? They look at the creature with these big eyes dead. And
this part made me really sad.
And they comment like, it's always watching. It's always watching. And then Marcello, he sees from far away the girl who was working at that cafe where he's trying to do some work. The only time we ever see him actually do work. The girl is like trying to communicate with him, trying to get him to come over to her. And he can't really hear her. And I kind of interpreted this like this girl was going to be one more chance for Marcello to maybe break the shallow seal and maybe go attempt something sincere somewhere else. Like, that's how I interpreted it. But we see him, and he's on the beach. He can't understand what she's saying, and he just kind of shrugs his hands nonchalantly, like I'm in it too deep. This is just what it is.
I think that's exactly right. I also think he doesn't think he deserves someone as sweet as her. He's not good enough to be around. He doesn't.
He wasn't good enough for Emma.
The scene when he's telling her that she looks like an angel, when he meets her in this cafe where she's waiting tables and cleaning, after he talks to her and she tells him about how she misses home, and he's talking about how she's so cherubic, it's this very sweet, like, honest, genuine interaction with someone, maybe the only one, like you said, that he has. And then he immediately calls Emma.
Yeah.
You know, because he'd been fighting with Emma at the beginning of that scene, got off the phone with her mad, talked to this girl, and then goes back and calls Emma. Because I think something about that girl reminded him of her, or made him softer in that moment. But even when he got on the phone with Emma, they started arguing again. I think he can appreciate it from a distance, but he can't be it. Yeah. We meet his father at one point too, and his father's the same way. He doesn't know his father. He never knew his father. His father's a womanizer.
He's a lot like his father, and his father can't even be settled within himself and his son to be around his own kid. He has to go party off. He's like, let's go to the nightclub. He's pretending like he doesn't do all this shit all the time, and then when he gets into the party, and it's like second nature for him.
He's manipulative. Because he says, oh yeah, a friend told me about this club. I don't know, like Chi-Cha something. And he goes, oh, Cha-Cha-Cha. They get there, and the dad, first thing he says, it looks the same as it used to.
He has a mild heart attack while he's off with this woman, and Marcello
Do you think they were fucking?
Yeah, of course.
Because it was like 30 minutes that they were alone together.
Of course they were fucking.
I know they were fully dressed, but they were fucking. Okay, yeah. I didn't know if they got that far. Yeah, of course.
They're Italian. As soon as the dad feels all right, he doesn't, reflect on he had a mild heart attack, something like that.
He got dizzy. Something happened.
And something happened. And when he gets his shit together, he doesn't think about his mortality. He doesn't think about like, well, it's been a night. I'm going to go spend time with my son.
And Marcello's begging him.
He immediately goes out into the car to be taken to the train station so he can get back home.
Mm-hmm. And Marcello seriously is like, just stay a few hours, have breakfast with me, talk to me.
That's La Dolce Vita by Federico Fellini, the one that helped launch Fellini into international superstardom, along with Marcello Mastroianni if I pronounce that right, our lead in this movie. But we're going to give this 1 through 5 each combined for best out of 10. The critique of these societies, while also, you also get the feeling, even though we were not in Rome in 1960, but you get the feeling that this is also a fairly accurate representation of the societies as well. Like, critiquing something while understanding it explicitly. And I mean, there's actual, like, celebrities like Nico and that poet whose name I can't remember. Like, these are actual real people that would be in these circles and shit like this. And it's just, and I could see people interpreting this almost in a very surface way that's like, wow, everything just seems super cool and like, oh, everybody's so sophisticated. And but you know, surely I think most people do understand that there is a critique here. But also the characters can't help themselves but be enveloped in it. Marcello can see through it, but he's not bigger than it, and ultimately he's as much of a problem as everyone else, if it's a problem at all.
Yeah.
I give it a 5.
I do too.
So check it out. It is an S tier. We're starting our European vacation off right with the iconic La Dolce Vita by Federico Fellini from 1960. Rests between It's a Wonderful Life and Let the Right One In. It's at least as good as those movies, if not better. So yes, come back on Wednesday, and I believe we'll be in Germany, a Wim Wenders movie this Wednesday. Check it out. It's that movie that City of Angels was based off of.
Ooh.
So yes, you know what it is, Wings of Desire. So come back on Wednesday, and we will talk about that. Check the show notes for links to other places to find us. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you think of Fellini and La Dolce Vita.
Arrivederci.